Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. I'm Leo.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
Right, now today's topic, you've either seen the title, but these guys haven't actually discussed it yet, so I just want to put it to them. So Steve, if I was to tell you, would you be interested in watching a film? It's about a guy who gets inducted into a terrorist organisation. He gets involved in their sort of religion. He basically gets wrapped up in trying to destroy a government installation, getting involved with criminals, yeah, and he's made out to be basically the central figure. Would that be a film of? Would that be a film you'd be interested in watching?
Possibly.
Yeah. What have I told you? You've already seen that film.
What's the name?
It's called Star Wars. So we're going to talk about Star Wars today, and I'm here to say Star Wars is about terrorists, and the terrorists being Rebel Alliance. Well, there's one way to look at it anyway, so I think I've given it a thought about.
Good perspective.
So this is a number of discussions we're going to be having a look at. So here's one perspective. So the government in this is the Empire, okay? And the Rebel Alliance is another word for terrorists, right? And you think of today's terrorists in today's world. Do they call themselves terrorists? They probably see themselves as heroes, just like Rebel Alliance. So,
well, they do, Al-Qaeda.
yeah. So, is Luke Skywalker a terrorist?
Depends which point of view you're looking at it. From a stormtrooper's point of view, yeah, then maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got to think, a stormtrooper, obviously, we all know the Galactic Empire is evil and what have you. But does your average stormtrooper, does your average, worker on the Death Star who's operating machinery, is he aware that, all this stuff that the Empire has done? Or he's got a job and he's following orders, yeah? He doesn't care. He's just pushing buttons or whatever it is. Yet you've got these people who literally want to blow up an entire government installation, millions in taxpayers, whatever the currency is they use, plus destroying thousands of lives.
Having said that, on the other scale, the Empire is an oppressive, controlling entity.
And the counter argument to that, are we saying does people like Al Qaeda see like the West as an oppressive government? Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to defend Al Qaeda. I just want to try and have one of the points with Star Wars is that it's actually about terrorists.
Well, I've never looked at it in that perspective.
Yeah. Well, you've got to think. You've got Luke Skywalker, who's just some guy. He gets wrapped up with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is into this like weird religion, right? There. So he gets wrapped up in this religion. He gets to know their weapons. He goes and liberates a POW from a government installation with a couple of criminals, yeah, and then goes and blows up that same installation, and they call it a suicide run. Yeah, it's about terrorists. There you go. I thought they would give more of an argument to me than this, rather than just agree.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, it's a good point of view. Interesting. Yeah, I've never thought of that.
So I'm just saying. So that's one of the things, and it's I think looking when the film was made, obviously you wouldn't see it like that, but looking at these days, I do think he looks like that, and obviously the Rebel Alliance, Luke, Han, and all that, they're all obviously heroes, but when you come down to brass tacks, they're the terrorists. The Empire is the government. They're the ruling government.
Well, they are the ruling government, but they've got there by inappropriate means, haven't they?
Like the Nazis or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, there are comparisons. You can compare it to the Nazis in the way, they came to power, although they were democratically voted in. The Nazis actually were in '33, but we weren't going down that route.
But so was the Emperor, wasn't he? He was democratically voted in.
Yeah. So there you go.
So
that's one of those subjects I wanted to sort of talk about. Maybe I thought that would go on a little bit longer than it did. I wasn't expecting them to just go, yeah, I agree. So, what do you think about that? And what's your opinion on that one? Next, I want to talk a little bit about the prequels. Now, we're not going to do a proper review on Star Wars because everyone's seen Star Wars. Now, I know Chris here was a bit of a fan. Well, maybe a fan's maybe a bit strong, but he didn't dislike it as much as most people, especially the third one. What about your opinion? And then we'll come back to why do you kind of like them?
I like the prequels from the fact that they tell the backstory and they build up to, what we know as Star Wars. So, from that perspective, I like the fact that it gives characters history and where they've come from, but also I like the fact that I don't like Charles being spun away, but I like episode 3. I think episode 3 is a really good episode, and I think that my favourite is Empire Strikes Back, and I think my second favourite is episode 3. And I like
more than the original Star Wars.
Yeah, because I like the story, and it's because I like the whole thing of Vader falling from grace and all this, the way I like the way it tells the story of the characters, so it builds. All the background. That's what I like about it.
How about you, Chris?
What are we talking? Just episode 3 right now?
No, well, just in the prequel trilogy.
There are bad points within each film.
I like the fact that it tells the backstory, but there's a lot of big holes that doesn't really kind of coincide with the original trilogy. A lot of stuff that he says that he had ideas for, but he didn't. He just plucked it there and then. And it doesn't always coincide with the trilogy.
I actually like the films, and the one I dislike out of the 3 is episode 2. And
I agree
the main reason I do that, I dislike it, is the bit where C3. Some of the things that C3PO comes out with are very kind of childlike, and I know they are films intended for children, but obviously they've got a cult following of lots of adults who were children at the time when the original trilogy were coming out. But I just find it's a bit jokey in places when he loses his head and he gets replaced by a battle droid head and vice versa, and he's on
too many
body, and it's just a bit.
I personally hate the prequels. I don't like any of them. I think they're a CGI mess. I think there's no central character. Take the first film, for instance. Who's actually the main protagonist in that? Yeah, you could say Obi-Wan, but he stays on the ship in the first part. Yeah,
isn't it?
Then you've got Qui-Gon Jinn and gets killed like 2/3 of the way through.
But he's done that in the same way he did the first Star Wars, where he had Obi-Wan killed early on.
But he was never a central character.
No.
So, does that mean our central character is Anakin Skywalker? And
in a way, yeah.
A little kid.
Obi-Wan and Anakin.
But is that what we want? Is that what we want a Star Wars film based about a little kid?
Well, but he's the central character, isn't he? Because it's all about him. It's all about Darth Vader, and he is Darth Vader.
No.
And it's all about the Skywalker family, isn't it? So.
Is that a story that we really want to see?
Well, it is, because that's what we want to see.
That's what or wouldn't it have been better to have Darth Vader as this shadowy sort of like figure that
but
maybe you didn't know as much about?
Do you think?
Yeah, I like that aspect, but I like the fact.
Do you think as well? Do you think that George should have just left it alone? 3
no,
films.
No, I don't. No, I like the fact that it gives you background actually to find out.
But you kind of knew the background anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, you did.
Here's my problem with the trilogy, and it's not something that it's not something that's brought up, and if you watch a few of the prequels, we all know it's CGI, blah, 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 so I'm not going to harp on about that. But there's 2 things that I think make the prequel significantly less than the original trilogy. It's not arguments I hear very often or at all, but it's what I think about the prequels. Okay, first one, when you were younger, and this was obviously you guys as well, when you were younger, at school or whatever, and Star Wars came out, who did you want to be? Luke Skywalker or Han Solo?
Luke Skywalker.
Han Solo.
And I would say Han Solo too, and I would bet you the majority of people would say Han Solo was their favourite character. Yeah? Obviously nothing to do with the Jedis. Yeah? Now the original 3, the first film, that the 3 main cast, only one of them was anything remotely to do with the Jedis, and even he was only, in the original Star Wars, he had barely nothing, he barely touched that side of it, yeah? Luke Skywalker thought no one with a lightsaber. Yeah?
No.
Right? And that was the film that started of them all. As the other 2 went on, they obviously had a little bit more of that, but still it was really only Luke Skywalker, and Leia was only mentioned in the third film. But the whole Jedi thing was really just a small part of it. Whilst I think the problem with the prequel films, it's all about Jedis. And I'm not saying Jedis are bad. I like the Jedis, but the problem is the problem for me with them is that Star Wars to me isn't just about Jedi. It's about the whole universe and everyone that is in there. And the prequels were missing that sort of character.
We discussed it before, and you said as well that you don't think the prequels had so much texture to them.
Yeah, that's my other point with them.
But the prequels are dealing with the Jedis because that is the Jedi's time. Obviously, when the Empire took over, and Palpatine culled all the Jedi, most of them. So that's why you don't hear about the Jedi in the other ones, because they're dead.
But that's why they're, to me, that's why they're a weaker, or partly the reason why they're a weaker story, is because I don't think a bunch of guys in brown robes are particularly interesting, to be quite honest with you. The far more interesting characters were Han Solo and I'd say Princess Leia than Luke and Obi-Wan Kenobi as well.
Yeah.
So to a point.
See, obviously, I don't know. My favourite is The Empire Strikes Back. But
well, look how popular Boba Fett was. And he's, again, nothing to do. He was barely in it, and he's nothing to do with Jedi's again.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. Yeah, I agree, but I do think the Jedi, the whole story is related to the Jedi. So
yeah. I mean that's the essential thing. But I think the problem, and this is going to come on to my second point with the Star Wars. Why I think the originals are better. This is another point where I don't think is expressed enough. Is that the original three trilogy, there was so much more. I mean, we'll just take one scene. When we're talking about any sort of scene, really, in the original three films, there's so much else happening in that world. You're looking at things like the Sand People, and we're getting told they don't march in twos and things like that. And there's so many other things going on that are sort of completely unrelated to the actual central story. All of these sort of random characters that you see just coming in, and they have nothing to do, but they all have their own little things that you can kind of think, oh, what's he doing? But I think the original, the prequel trilogy, it's just that the central story is pretty much, and there's nothing really, it doesn't ever sort of have any other factors that come into the story. I mean, like we mentioned Boba Fett, so you're looking at the bounty hunters, and it shows you the bounty hunters, and you think, oh, who are those guys?
I mean, do you think, by making the prequels, it tarnished the original trilogy? In some ways, I think. It's cheapened Star Wars as a brand, I think.
Yeah.
I think the original three films are, they're still classics, and obviously there's part of the reason why we're all sat here, interested in geek culture as a general rule of thumb. But I do think the prequels were poorly judged. And I think the problem with it is no one actually said to George Lucas, I don't think that's a good idea. He basically, he kind of like was just, he had too many yes men around, and he thought this is what people wanted to see. And that was unfortunately, I actually think, to be honest with you, I'll go as far as say George Lucas was lucky in Star Wars. I think because the rest of his filmography, let's be honest, Red Tails, Howard the Duck, they've been pretty much misses. And I think George Lucas is credited too solely for Star Wars. When there was lots of other people, there were lots of other sort of costume designers and things like that in the original three films. Obviously, other directors that brought other stuff to the table. Whilst when it's pure up to George Lucas in the prequel trilogies, this is what we get. Anyway, the next subject I want to talk about is how do you feel about the special edition? Going back to the original the original films, do you prefer the special editions or the original sort of older version without the sort of added special effects and things?
I like some aspects of the special editions. I don't like the fact when Luke falls in Bespin in The Empire Strikes Back, when he falls from Gantry, when he's fighting Vader and he falls down, you hear him screaming. It's actually Palpatine that's screaming. They've dubbed it over from Return of the Jedi.
But they have now taken it back out again.
Have they?
Yeah, in the DVDs they took it back out.
Now, I didn't like that, but some bits I quite liked. I liked the bit with the Dewback bit.
I wasn't too keen on the Jabba scene.
No.
No,
It just didn't look
I
very
didn't
good.
think the Jabba was very well done. The CGI was crap.
They have improved it slightly again with the DVD, didn't they?
Yeah.
And the
They
Blu-ray,
changed it
they've changed it slightly, but it still doesn't look that good. And I don't think the
It's
best
wrong
one was
colour
the
for a
Return of the
start.
Jedi one when it was a up it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good.
That looks
Jedi.
good, and I don't think even in did he appear in episode 1? Didn't he? He's not
Yeah.
very
I,
good there
I like
either.
my favorite. I like the bit when you see that Imperial like troop carrier thing that looks like a shuttle Tiberium come down, and the dewbacks come across. I like
I
that.
mean, I think personally,
Some bits now.
I would say original, leave
unnecessary.
it as it was.
Some bits are unnecessary, like some droid
Maybe clean it up a little
in
bit, like
Tatooine.
clean it up. Like they do, don't they? They kind of,
Mm.
but maybe he added a few too many scenes, like.
Yeah. I mean, I know popular opinion with the majority of geeks, whatever, they actually prefer the original, but I don't mind the special edition apart from one scene, and that's the Greedo bit. That's the one thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the one thing.
It's quite pointless as well.
Dodging out the way.
Well, they just think Han shot first. You know, there was no shooting first because Greedo didn't shoot at all. You know, in the original films, Greedo didn't shoot at all. So he was just murdered. There was no Han shot first because Han just shot. There was no Greedo didn't shoot at all.
Yeah, obviously.
But they tried to make it so he wasn't some cold-blooded killer.
Yeah, I know, and that was a bad
You know.
move. And the way they actually did it, because he just looked like he got just jerked out of the way so unnaturally quickly, and then it was
It just didn't look right because Greedo's a bounty hunter. He wouldn't have missed him.
Yeah, not from that far.
Exactly. He's got to be pretty
But-
lame. Yeah, he's got to be pretty lame. But yeah, I agree with you that probably the worst scene in there.
Yeah.
To be honest, and pointless, totally pointless. Why bother changing that? And no
The
relevance.
rest of the things, I do think.
I mean, the Wampa scenes in The Empire Strikes Back are a bit better
Yeah.
because you see more of the Wampa and it gives it.
I like
a
the
bit
big scene in Star Wars as well. I like that.
more-
In the original Star Wars film, I did like the big scene. But I'm not too worried either way. It's the Greedo bit is the only thing that really winds me up, to be honest with you.
And the Jabba bit, I don't know.
Yeah, I like to see more. I did like to see more of Han Solo in that sort of scene. Like I said, I quite like the bits where it fleshes out the sort of
It
the
gives you more information.
yeah,
and
the
stuff,
sort of the not the main story, and that's why I quite like that particular bit. I didn't think the special effects were very good, but we're talking about 99 when that came out, 2000, something like that. So
97 on it, original special edition.
Was it?
97, yeah.
So I don't know how. Obviously, CGI has come on a lot more since then. So but he still doesn't look anywhere near as good. And
But Jabba's his eyes are wrong colour for a start.
yeah, it looks a lot smaller to me as well.
Yeah.
And I know
He's younger. He's probably
Yeah, but he's not that much younger.
he's probably not eating as many of those little frog-like.
But it's a
things,
bit
is
like,
he?
I don't know if you remember, like the Phantom Menace, when they did Yoda as a puppet, and he looks absolutely dire.
Yeah.
I mean, they now have, in the Blu-ray, they've CGI'd him, like they have in the other two films, and he looks better, but again, it was totally crap. Totally
You've just
lame.
reminded me of one more point I wanted to bring. This is the second to last point, but one of the problems I have with the original trilogy, I'm talking about Return of the Jedi specifically here, okay, and that is the Jabba scenes. Now, Jabba is meant to be basically the Star Wars equivalent of the Mafia, but to me, they look like a bunch of monsters in a cave. They don't look like they do not look like an organised group to me. They're a bunch of monsters in a cave. Yeah. To me, they don't seem like criminals to me. They just seem like barbaric monsters. I cannot buy, and I never did write for even back then. It just seemed weird to me that these people were, organised criminals who had a criminal empire. They just seemed like a bunch of random monsters who grunted and sort of just.
But no, I disagree with that because Jabba, I like Jabba, and everything to do with Jabba's palace, I'm gonna like.
I'm not saying it wasn't effective visually,
No,
but to me it didn't seem criminal. It just sounded like a bunch of monsters to me.
Well, yeah, but what is that visual? Because he's a big fat.
No, I don't mean specifically Jabba. I mean the whole lot of them. It just didn't. It didn't seem like an organisation to me. You look at the Empire. That's an organisation.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not saying obviously that Jabba's henchmen should be that kind of organised, but it did not seem like. If you look at obviously the Mafia and stuff like we have today, That's a business. It didn't seem like a business to me. It just seemed like a bunch of like no cantina band. The people that monsters in the cantina seem more
I
like.
know, but it's more like that's his home, isn't it? It's his palace. That's where he like kicks back and watches the Twi'lek strippers in front of him. You know, he has a good time. You know, it's not. You know, and he gets his bounty hunters and stuff to do all the dirty work. So he just sits back and, you know, maybe it's his twilight years. You know, he's putting on a few pounds. He's eating too much. He's smoking too much of that pipe. You know, he doesn't get out much anymore.
Yeah, all right. So the last thing we'll talk about is the new films. All right. So episode 7 has been announced. And they're going to say obviously they're going to have an episode 8 and 9, and then also potentially some spin-offs.
One every year.
Some spin-off films, and the first episode 7 is going to be directed by J.J. Abrams. And it's looking like the original cast, at least the majority of them, will possibly be back. I mean,
in cameos? Or?
They haven't said yet. At the time of doing
this.
Well,
it won't be. I mean, Harrison Ford will be like in his 70s.
Rumours have it it's probably going to be a passing of the torch. It's going to be a case of they went with the main stars. They'll be kind of like Ben Kenobi was in the original film. More of a mentor role, that sort of thing, because they're obviously, especially like Harrison Ford's knocking on a bit, and
Carrie Fisher doesn't look very good anymore. No.
But I'm sure they've all expressed an interest in coming back, and I'd love to see them back in those roles.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
I really would, despite the fact they're obviously.
I hope.
The only thing I worry about is
there's no Lucas influence. That's why
I'm not too worried about that. I'm worried about this saying they're going to do a movie every year. Would it be is it going to be Star Wars overkill?
Yeah, it'll end up like.
Are you going to be kind of like?
It'll end up like bloody Star Trek.
It will really tarnish the original trilogy if they just keep
not
whacking out another one.
It depends. I mean, as I understand it, they're going to have your 7, 8, and 9, and then the other films are going to be pretty much unrelated. And the one rumor that's come out recently is, and I know you guys don't really play games, but there's a video or a computer game called Knights of the Old Republic, which is based 2,000 years before Star Wars, or a number of thousand years. So it's way in the past. So it will have nothing to do with the sort of the current continuity. So it can be a completely separate story. So that to me would be potentially more interesting. I'd like to see a Bounty Hunters film, personally. I'd like to see maybe a Boba Fett film, or maybe one focusing on bounty hunters. I'd actually like to see that maybe on a TV show, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Probably work better for TV than it would.
I mean, I think that would be. I don't know. I quite like the Clone Wars.
Jar Jar Binks spin-off.
The Clone Wars, series. I think that would work quite well with that. As having a bounty hunter thing, and I quite like the story. Some of the storylines in those are quite good. I think. Cool. Because it just gives you again more backstory to everything.
I think people are more wary now because of the prequels. So people are sort of, maybe not quite as excited as they would have been if maybe the prequels hadn't have happened.
But it'd be obviously interesting to see where it'll go. Where they'll take it.
I just think there's a danger it's going to be crap at the end of the day. If a film a year, it's just going to become.
I don't
tired.
I don't know if that will actually happen. To be honest,
they'll lose interest in it. Bloody another Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it from Disney's point of view. They bought this. They bought Lucasfilm for $4 million. They want to return on the investment. So they want to get people buzzing about Star Wars. So that's why they want to sort of have these films. You've got to think. I mean, you look at films like Harry Potter and the Twilight films. They've had pretty much a film a year, and they've all been successful.
They have, but I think there was the book. She'd written Harry Potter. That she'd written the book, and it took all the books, and it took all those amount of films to tell the whole story. But that's all been done. So the story, Lucas, the story's been told. It's done. He's then gone on to do the prequels, adding more to the story. So again, now somebody else is going to add more and try and broaden it. But it's kind of like, eventually it's going to, you get it where it's done too much, and you kind of just like, it's getting a bit too much and just gone too far. Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what it's like. I mean, I don't know. I just
Well,
I feel a little bit concerned because Lucas is not going to have anything to do with it. So, anything to do with it, which worries me a little bit. Cause
no, I don't think he's
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
he's a creative consultant.
I don't think that means anything. I think they've just given him that title as a gratuity. Just sort of as a sort of.
But surely he'd have some sort of say if they were going to mess his film up.
No, he won't. He's sold the rights. It's nothing to do with him now. It's
That's
nothing
what
to do
worries
with
me
him.
a little bit because he's the man.
But he's the one that copped the first.
He did, but he did the first 3 and they were good.
No, there you go. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Leave us a couple of comments. What do you think about obviously some of the discussions that we've had? We'd love to hear your comments. So leave us a comment and we'll see you next time. See you later.